Hi everyone, it's me again, Cherie. So, in my first video, I talked about starting over at 62. Today, I want to talk about something that I've dealt with my entire life, which is work. Work has been my comfort zone, my identity, and sometimes my hiding place. So I want to share with you how I got there, how I got there, and what I'm trying to do differently. Okay. So I think I should probably start with how I got there, right? Or how work became my identity. So for most of my life, right, I knew exactly who I was. You know, at work, well, first of all, let me back up. At work, I knew exactly who I was, you know, because at home sometimes things can be messy or confusing or lonely, but at work, I was the reliable one, am the reliable one, the fixer, the one that people can count on. I'm the one double checking, triple checking numbers, catching mistakes, staying late, And the more that I did this, the more that I showed up like this, the more people trusted me. And yeah, the more that people trusted me. And that trust started to feel like my whole worth. So the downside of that is that if something went wrong at work, I immediately thought that something was wrong with me. So when I made that big mistake recently, a few weeks ago, it wasn't like I messed up a number or anything, but it felt like my whole identity got shaken. And then that's when I realized how dangerous it is when your whole sense of self is wrapped around your job. And so that scared me because I am getting closer to retirement. And I had to ask myself, who am I if I'm not the go to person at work anymore? So in this video, I want to talk honestly how I got to that point and what I'm trying to do differently so that my job is or becomes what I do and not who I am. There have been and honestly still are seasons where I find myself still staying late, skipping breaks, continuing to triple check work, being a reliable one, because that's what makes me feel needed and or has made me feel needed in the past. And I just want to be perfectly clear here that it's not about my job. My company has always been very supportive and has always encouraged me. All of my bosses have always encouraged me to take my lunches, my breaks, my vacations, and to basically shut the laptop down. This pattern that I've developed over the years is all about me. It's that little girl in me always chasing gold stars and validation. And somewhere along the way, I let work become the place where I want to earn those gold stars. So also, I just want to mention that there are a lot of things going on or happening in the background. Being a single mom, um, going through a divorce, moving to California, all of that pushed me even harder um, as to having work be my safe space, you know. And when I talk about this pattern, I'm talking about how I showed up at work as this perfectionist, be the reliable one energy, skipping breaks and putting all that pressure on myself to never drop the ball. Another example is I remember there was a team holiday lunch that we had to attend. I was so locked into my to do list that I didn't even know how to relax. And I was low key annoyed that I had to stop working to go to this lunch. I was so stressed at this lunch. I remember one of my colleagues who knows me very well, she sat next to me to help me to relax, because I was like basically in tears because I did not know how to relax and I could not enjoy the lunch, you know. So, the advantage is that all this hard work, it did pay off on paper because I did recently get another promotion, with more responsibility. But then I recently made a really big mistake at work and it shook me because my whole identity was being tied to my job, being the reliable one who rarely drops the ball. My boss was super supportive with the mistake that I made, but it still rocked me because I don't typically drop the ball. And again, I want to say that my company is super supportive and they always tell us not to work on weekends, not to work on vacation. All that pressure to be on all the time is coming from me. When I think about it, if I can go back and change anything in my life, I would have worked less when I was raising my children. Because all of that working hard, it taught my family how to function without me. Now, all of my children are independent. They all work just as hard, if not harder than me. And I'm proud of all of my children. But I also know that I helped create this grind mentality. And I want to break the cycle now. I watched my mom, who was a single parent, work hard. And that's probably where I got it from. But I'm deciding that this cycle ends with me. So if any of this sounds like you, I want to invite you to try one small thing. Take your full lunch. Shut your laptop and leave work when you're supposed to leave. Take that vacation. Your job matters, but you matter more than your job. And I'm saying all of this, but I'm not there yet. I actually started today. I took 2 short breaks. I took 2 walks around the block and I took a full lunch. And then it was time for me to clock out. I stopped working. My work wasn't done, but I stopped. And let me tell you, it was very, very hard for me to do. Very hard. So I'm practicing, I'm trying, you know, but it's not easy. But, when your whole identity is tied to your job, every little thing at work feels huge. A small mistake feels like you're a failure. You just mess up that one thing, but you make it bigger than what it is. When your identity is tied to your job, you start ignoring your body and your relationships because everything that isn't work, it feels less important. And over time, that pressure can burn you out. It can hurt your health. It can leave you wondering who you are without that job. I recently started doing more things that have nothing to do with work, planning more trips and vacations. So I invite you to stick with me on this journey. I'm a work in progress. You don't have to let your job be your whole identity. You can start taking back small pieces of your life. It can be simple as just taking a lunch. And when your workday is over, shut everything down and leave. These small choices, they add up. So if any of this resonates with you, join me on this journey. Thank you for listening to me. Have a good evening.